Hi there, everyone. Art Burns, wishing you well today. So, as I've said here before, last night, every Sunday night, I give a webinar on through Eventbrite that is a free webinar, and it's all about stress and how to reduce stress and how to recognize stress and all about stress. The motivation for this webinar is to educate people, right? Because until we understand the stress in our bodies, it's very difficult to reduce the stress in our bodies, right? So I used to work with somebody who had this great saying he always used to talk about. He said, "What is measured is mastered." Right. So just by understanding something, you've already taken a big step to kind of mastering it, like kind of overcoming it. Especially when you talk about stress. And so one thing, and so in this webinar, what we do is we talk about how the recognizing the signs of stress in your body, right? The things that happen, the heart rate, the blood pressure, the respiratory system, all the different physical things that are happening to you in the stress response, so that you can recognize them, right? But not only that, what we also talk about is the way that the stressors in our outer life trigger the stress in our internal life, right? And the thing is that 95% of the stress that most people feel in modern society is not what stress is meant to be, right? Stress is something that's meant to keep you alive, right? In a true life or death situation, right? It's the fight or flight response of your body, right? And certainly there are times in modern society where it's very helpful, right? Like your stress response is what makes you stop when you hear a screeching tire, as you're about to step into a street, right? It makes you do things before you even know what's going on, right? And of course, that's just one simple explanation. But the problem is that 95% of the stress that we feel in modern society comes from our thoughts, right? And this is where it gets really kind of frightening and a little bit troublesome, right? Because when it's our thoughts that are creating the stress, when our thoughts are the stressors, it happens over and over and over and over again, right? And so that's why 77% of American adults, and this is before coronavirus, right? So now it's probably in the 95% region, but 77% of American adults, according to the American Stress Institute, experience chronic stress, which means that every single day they're getting into the stress response, usually for most of the day, right? Like it's over and over and over again. And that's the problem when the stressors are part of our thoughts, right? And so this is why I tell people at one point or another, I mentioned to every single one of my clients this simple premise, right? That the stressors that we experience in our lives, right? They're inevitable, right? I don't care if you live in Midtown Manhattan or the middle of Montana, right? You are going to experience stressors. Now, the stressors are going to be much different in Midtown Manhattan from how they would be in Montana, and some might be, more, sort of easy for certain people to deal with than others, right? So we're all going to be, sort of, attuned to our own, weaknesses and strengths that way. But in any case, you're still going to experience stressors, right? But here's the thing: the stress that the stressors cause in our body, those are completely optional, right? You have full control over that, right? Now, again, sometimes the stress that you feel in your body is necessary, and it's something that you'll welcome, right? Like that screeching tire that makes you stop and grab your kid before you step into a street in front of a car that's running through a stop sign or something like that, right? Like, so that could be a very positive thing, and something that obviously we're going to welcome. But when we're thinking of bills, and we're kind of dwelling in the troublesome thoughts that we might have about our finance, our romance, our social status, or our health status, right? Those are the big four. When we get into those kind of thoughts, right, the stress becomes something that is a reaction of your body to a mental event, and so the purpose of the webinar that I do every Sunday evening is to get people to address that, right? Because again, the stress that we feel in the appropriate times, right? When something is dangerous, something is going to hurt us, and that's when the stress, that's when we want it, right? So, but as I say, most of the time that's not the case, right? Most of the time the stress that we're feeling is because of money concerns or love concerns or health concerns or social concerns. Now that doesn't mean that these things are not valid concerns, and by no means am I suggesting that you should just forget about these things and just live like, oh, it doesn't matter if I lose my house or my car or whatever. No, that's not what I'm saying, right? But what I'm saying is that by obsessively worrying about those things, right, either things that are in the future or those things that happened in the past, right? When we're living in the future or the past, that's when the stress is going to come, right? And this comes mostly from our wandering mind, right? Like when we're doing any kind of activity that is not what we call a task oriented activity, right? Like something that we don't have to think about what we're doing, right? And this is like 95% of the activities that we have, right? The mundane things that we're doing in our lives, right? Like folding laundry, washing dishes, driving our car, walking from our desk to the washroom or to the kitchen, washing dishes, on and on and on, like taking a shower, brushing our teeth, just there's so many different times in our lives where we don't have to think about what we're doing, right? Now, in those times, the question that I ask you is, what are you thinking about? Right. And unfortunately for most people, that is the time where we're thinking about those things, like the thing we saw on Facebook that we realized we didn't get invited to a barbecue over the weekend and wondering why and what's wrong with us and why is our life so horrible and why can't we have real friends and this kind of thing. Obviously this is a kind of a silly example. I'm not suggesting that everybody has that kind of thing, but these are the kinds of thought processes that happen that cause the stress in our body, right? Because here's the thing. Your brain doesn't know the difference between that kind of thought process, right? Like the thought process, for instance, of a money problem, right? The way that our brain works is it's wired for survival. So it's always going to think about the kind of bad things that might be happening, right? So when you think of a money issue that you have, generally speaking, your mind is going to take you from that simple thought and it's going to start thinking about like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose everything I have. I'm going to be unemployed. I'm going to, have to, downsize my home. I'm going to do, and these thoughts can happen very, very quickly, right? And that's not something that's wrong with you. That's just the way that we're wired to be, right? And this could happen while you're walking from your car to the entrance of a grocery store, right? Those times where we're not engaged in something that we have to think about what we're doing, right? That's when we're open to these kind of thoughts that come into our mind. And this is where we start, again, your body doesn't know the difference between just the fact that you're thinking about all these troubles and these troubles actually happening to you. So in other words, your brain in that time, when you start thinking like, oh my gosh, I don't have the money to pay this bill, the consequences of this are going to be horrible, your body thinks that you're already experiencing those consequences, right? And your brain, your physical brain, that's what I mean by your body, it doesn't know how to react except for the stress response, right? It's the only thing it knows how to do, right? All it knows how to do to protect itself from this thing that it thinks is happening is to initiate this stress response. It is a whole body thing, right? Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your respiratory system, speeds up. Various parts of your brain shut down, like the executive thinking of your brain just shuts down. Your memory shuts down. Like you're not functioning as your whole you in that time. And that's not even to mention the immune system, the lymphatic system, the reproductive system, the digestive system, all these things shut down because in that moment your body thinks that it's under attack, and so it's going to devote all of its energy to surviving that attack, right? Even though that attack is just something that you're thinking about, right? And it's easy to just not think about this, right? And so what we do when we practice mindfulness in the service of reducing stress, right? What we're doing then is we're taking these times where our mind wanders off into those scary places, right? And of course, this is just one very simple example, right? There's millions and millions of ways in which this could happen to us, right? Because again, it's really the four big threats that we might feel, to our well-being, right? The finance, the romance, the social status, the health status. Those are the big four, right? Basically, all the worries that we have in our minds and of the future or the past can be boiled down into one of those four, one or more of those four, right? And so because the human brain processes about 60,000 thoughts a day, right? Even if 1% of those thoughts are about a threat to one of those four things or more than one of those four things, that's 6,000 times, right? I'm sorry, 600 times, 1%, 600 times that you're going to be thinking a fear-based thought and that you're going to be inviting that stress response to happen in your body. So the way that we sort of, work to alleviate this, right? Because remember, the stressors are inevitable, right? The money problems, they're inevitable. The in our society, unfortunately, for better or worse, however your philosophy, deals with that. But in addition to that, we all have health issues, right? Like our bodies go through, problematic things, right? We all have social issues. We all have romantic issues. These things are inevitable, right? Like even if we're living alone in a cave, there's some level of these things are going to creep in, right? Maybe not the money thing if you're living in a cave and just catching squirrels for food or whatever. But what I'm saying is that on any level of modern society, one or more of those things is always going to be there. It's always going to be causing that. It's always going to be presenting itself as a stressor, right? So how do we avoid the stress that those stressors are causing? Well, it's very, very simple, in fact, right? It's not necessarily easy, but it's very simple, okay? It's about just paying attention to what is happening right now, okay? For instance, like right now, I have all these problems, right? Like I have, there's money issues, there's social issues, there's romantic issues, there's health issues, there's always those things going through our minds, right? But if I'm sitting here and I know that the roof is over my head, right? I've got shelter. I've got food in my refrigerator. I'm breathing. Just the fact that I'm breathing and I can sense all my faculties and able to see and all my senses are working. This means that there's more right with me than is wrong right now, right? And so when we can dwell in that, right, that knowledge that right now I'm okay, right? Like yeah, I still have to deal with whatever issues might be alive in my life, but right now, in this minute, I'm okay. And that means that I don't need to be afraid. It's not like there's a lion about to attack me, right? At least I hope not. But the point is, though, that when we can dwell in the present moment and realize that in this present moment, I am okay. That what happens then is that we can keep our blood pressure where it's supposed to be, our heart rate where it's supposed to be, our respiratory system. I can breathe with my belly at any given time, right? Even when I start to feel that stress creeping in, just take some belly breaths. Convince your brain that you're not scared, right? There's not a lion chasing you. There's not a car screeching through an intersection about to hit you. There's nothing to be afraid of, right? And when we do that now, the full functioning of our brain, right? The executive functioning of our brain, the thing that separates us from the animals, from the rest of the mammals on Earth, rather, that is still intact. It's still operating at the fullest potential that it can, right? And so is my memory. So are all of my systems, my immune system, my reproductive system, my digestive system, my lymphatic system. All of these things are working the way that they should work, right? Which means that I'm keeping myself optimized for thriving, right? Not just surviving, right? So ironically, right, one of the things that I do in this webinar, right, is I walk people through a little meditation, maybe about 8 to 10 minutes, right? It's just a very simple grounding exercise, right? Just something where, we spend a few moments, sensing into our breath and our bodies, and then we basically check in with our five senses, right? And we ground ourselves. And every time I get people telling me, that felt great. I loved it. It was amazing. Thank you so much. People love it. And because most of these people have never tried meditation before, even if they have, there's a satisfaction that comes with taking 10 minutes and just unplugging from the flow and the hustle and all of that thinking that we do, and simply grounding into our senses, which is the present, right? Which lets us know that, yeah, I can hear birds outside, or I can hear, my son watching television, and I know that we're all safe and we're okay. And this makes me feel good. And so that's why everybody, every time they tell me, that felt great. I haven't felt that that relaxed in years, I hear all kinds of comments like that, right? Well, ironically, last night, halfway through this meditation, my internet cut out and it just dropped, and it just like I didn't even realize. I opened my eyes to like, at one point, and I realized that my screen was blank. I was like, what happened here? I lost the whole presentation. So right in the middle of a meditation. I mean, there's nothing more awkward for a meditation teacher than to have something like that happen. So, I laughed it off. Thankfully, like, you who are watching, the 13 of you who stayed on the call, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you. I'm so grateful for you. Some people didn't stay on, but some people did, and it was really wonderful. So obviously you can't just like plug back into a meditation, and I very awkwardly fumbled through it. And it's like, okay, try to do something. And then we just moved on, right? And I just kind of went on with the rest of the presentation. And still, those people who stayed on, they still got a lot of benefit, but they didn't get the meditation. And I felt horrible. So I offered this to them last night, and I'm going to offer it to all of you right now, whether you're on this call or not. Just everybody gets this gift from me today. I have a guided meditation that I did that's to be used while you're driving. Okay, it's about 12 minutes long. It's just an audio track. You can play it on your phone, whether it's through the speakers in your car or not, doesn't matter. Obviously, you're not closing your eyes, it's a driving meditation. So, but it's basically a way to ground yourself while you're driving, because driving is one of those activities that we don't have to think about what we're doing, right? Like most of the time, I challenge you to when you get to a destination, before you get out of your car, try to remember the different turns that you took and how you got from point A to point B, right? And chances are, if you're like most people in the world, you don't remember, right? Because it was so automatic. You don't have to think about it, right? You're so familiar with these streets, the route that you took, whether you're going to the grocery store or to work or to pick up your kids or at school or whatever, you're so familiar with that activity that you don't even think about it, right? It's just you're just not even concerned with it. So the question is, what were you thinking about, right? And again, because of the way we're wired for survival, most likely what you were thinking about was the things that are challenging in your life, right? The finance, the romance, the social status, the health status. Most likely it was one of those four things, right? And that's where, sometimes when we get out of the car, we're already in a stressed place, right? We're already feeling that tightness. We're already feeling that tension, and our brains are already not functioning the way they should, right? And then when you go in to pick up your kids and your child is in a mood because they've been in school all day, and maybe they're a little hungry, or they spilled their lunch and they didn't get to eat, something like that. Now the way that you react to that is not your true authentic reaction. That is based on the stress that you're feeling because of whatever you were thinking about in the car. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to post the link in the comments. Okay, it's a guided meditation, a simple recording. You can download it to your phone. Share it, please. Share it with everybody you can, because I've gotten a lot of great feedback about it. It's a 12-minute meditation. So usually most people, the trips that we take in the car are more than 12 minutes. And that was the idea, right? That I wanted to make it so short that it wasn't something that you had to like sit in your car, after you get where you're going, right? So most people, when you drive somewhere, you're going to drive more than 12 minutes. Okay, so that's how long this is. And it's basically just a grounding exercise to keep you grounded and paying attention to what you're doing while you're driving the car. And when you do that, that's giving your mind the focus so that all those thoughts, the scary thoughts about your finance, your romance, your social status, your health status, those things are just going by and you're not even noticing. And instead, now we've reversed things, right? We're noticing what we're doing and we're not noticing those thoughts, right? And that's what we want, right? That's the balance that is going to serve us, right? Because then when we get out of the car and we greet our children, we're greeting them with our authentic self. We're greeting them with our, full, the full potential of ourselves as parents, right? And and if you're not a parent, then when you get to work, you're going to be presenting yourself as the full potential of yourself as that person who fits into the employment situation, right? You're not going to like be ready to snap at someone. You're not tight as a spring because of the stress that you were thinking about while you were stuck in traffic and thinking about all the different problems that you might be going through. All right, so again, I'm going to put it in the comments. If you have any trouble downloading it or whatever, just reach out and let me know. And I would love to hear what you think about it. So if you get a minute or two after you try this once or twice, shoot me an email or send me just comment on this video wherever you're watching it. Let me know what you think of it. I would love the feedback, all right? So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy the meditation, and and I certainly owe it to the people who were on my call last night and missed out on on the meditation. So I actually offered it to all of them as well, separately, and I'm emailing that to all of them individually. But I wanted to I thought it'd be nice to just share that with everyone. So. Think of it as an Independence Day gift, right? And what we're doing is we're celebrating our independence from those worrisome thoughts, okay? And you can definitely do it. It's very, very simple. All right, folks, thank you very much for listening. I wish you well, and please let me know what you think about the meditation. All right, take care, everybody. Be back tomorrow. Bye-bye.